Back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Thank you for tuning in on this beautiful Friday morning here in West Texas. Joining us on the phones right now, an honor to visit with our next guest, former White House Press Secretary and Communications Director, also author of the brand new book, Leading America, President Trump's Commitment to People, Patriotism, and Capitalism. Sean Spicer joining us here on the Chad Hasty Show. Mr. Spicer, good morning. How are you today?
I'm well, Chad. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to visit with you, and following you on Twitter, it's always fun because you're not holding back on Twitter either, are you?
Oh, Chad, the irony of you saying that is, as I was getting ready to chat with you here, I have a tweet that's half written, and I have another one coming right behind it. So, because it's funny. I watch stuff happen, and I can't help. There's an element of me that just, it's funny. As much, even in the book Leading America that you just mentioned is coming out on Tuesday, I talk about cancel culture and all this other stuff that's going on, and you realize how often we see it in our daily lives, and I can't help but tweet about it. It was just because you got me going now. This morning, there's country music act Morgan Wallen. Your fans, your listeners may be familiar with him. I follow Morgan, and I've listened to him for a while. He got kicked off coming on Saturday Night Live because he went out partying and violated COVID protocols. And he was on the Today Show. Lauren Michaels, the head of it, was on the Today Show this morning. Willie Geist is interviewing him. He says, Morgan violated this, so we had to get rid of him, blah, blah, blah. And he's such a nice guy. And never once do they ask about how Saturday Night Live paid audience members last week $150 to come to be a live audience as a way of getting around COVID restrictions.
Of course they're not going to ask about that one.
I know.
It's the rules apply to only some.
Right.
It's absolutely crazy. Talk about the current election that we're in right now. I know yesterday you had quite a bit to say about the debates, the future debates that are kind of up in the air right now. How are you just viewing this election cycle that we're in?
I think it's pretty nuts. Look, it changes every moment. I literally sit there and think to myself, if you're a fiction writer, like a sci-fi kind of writer, you couldn't write half of the stuff that's going on between the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett, the president contracting COVID, the president's tax release is coming out. Pelosi's on TV right now talking about this panel that she's going to form regarding the 25th Amendment. I mean, it's insane what's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's just we thought that, the 2016 election was crazy, and it was. But this one, I mean, it's above everything. And I'm glad you brought up Nancy Pelosi's deal. This 25th Amendment panel that they're trying to put together. To me, this just sounds like another way of discrediting the president, discrediting the 2016 election, and what may happen in 2020.
Yeah. Well, look, I got to tell people, Chad, I wrote this book, Leading America, because I wanted to basically get people to understand what's at stake in this election and the headwinds we face as conservatives, whether it's Hollywood, big tech, what journalists are being taught right now. I mean, look, in themselves, each one of these instances we could talk about that are in the book, but when you look at them collectively and totally, you recognize how big of a deal this is. And so the whole book, Leading America, deals with this because I don't think we get the headwinds that we face right now, mm-hmm. and what kids are getting taught in school, how journalists are being taught, and that's why we get the news that we do. There is so much going on right now. And look, I literally open the book by saying every election you're told that this election is the most important one. I've been in politics over 25 years. I've said it myself. I honest to God believe that if people don't understand what's at stake in this election, then something's wrong with them.
Well,
Biden campaign, Chad, yesterday, Joe Biden was asked what his position on packing the court was for the 80th time, and he said, I'm not going to tell you because it'll make a headline. No kidding, it'll make a headline. That's what you're supposed to do, is tell people where you stand on issues.
Yeah, and there's no way the president could get away with that. There's no way anyone else could get away with that. And that goes to what you talk about, in the book when it comes to people, patriotism, capitalism. The Supreme Court, in packing the Supreme Court, would fundamentally change this nation forever.
Yeah. Look, I think if you're a conservative and you stop for a second and realize the selection and addition of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court will give us a real conservative court, 6-3 court for at least a generation. We've seen these justices that are wishy-washy that Republicans appoint, and a year later they kind of go, oh, I don't know that I'm that conservative anymore. Amy Coney Barrett will be a justice in the mold of Brett Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito. Like, we have a great Thomas. I mean, we've got some solid conservative justices. That is our backstop right now, that no matter how the Senate goes, the House goes to the presidency, knowing that we have conservatives on the court that'll actually interpret the Constitution as it was meant to be is important. Look at what's happening. Literally, Chad, as we speak right now, Nancy Pelosi is holding a press conference talking about this 25th Amendment. It's the Supreme Court that's going to have to rule on these kind of things. It's a Supreme Court that matters. That's what's at stake. That's why I wrote this book. Because when people go out there and argue, Chad, and they're talking to their neighbor and they say, oh, but Trump tweets and Trump does this, people need to be armed with the facts and the information and the examples to be able to say, really, let me tell you what's going on in the left and combat it and fight back, because this is what we're up against. And so often you hear people on the left and the people in the media dismiss conservatives and say, oh, that's ridiculous. There's no voter fraud. There's no reason that that's a big deal. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? We need to be armed with the facts and make compelling arguments. Chad, I talked to the president the day before yesterday, and I said, Mr. President, when you said that I've done more in 47 months than Joe Biden said in 47 years, that resonated. You need to keep going on that. Talk about your accomplishments. Talk about your policies and what's at stake, because people need to get it. They get so wrapped up in what the media narrative is about tweets. The reality is this is about our lives. This is about policy.
Visiting with Sean Spicer, author of the new book. It's coming out next week, Leading America, President Trump's Commitment to People, Patriotism, and Capitalism. Sean, I want to ask you about this. Take us a little bit behind the scenes and maybe what people don't see about the president, because the media likes to put out this narrative that he doesn't care. He doesn't really care about the people. He doesn't care who he gets sick. He doesn't care about his allegiances. That's what the media likes to put out there. How does the president really feel, and what does he do to keep that commitment to not only the people who voted for him, but all Americans?
How does he do it?
Yeah. I mean, show us, give us some kind of the behind the scenes examples, what you saw from this president.
Well, I mean, look, I think that what happens is he sees things, right? And it's funny because I've worked for a lot of politicians. I worked for President Bush. A lot of them are really good people, but they play by the rules. And this president looks and sees examples where people are being taken advantage of, where Washington's overlooking people, where government bureaucrats and politicians are kind of putting their needs ahead of the people's needs. And this president will see something that happens and say, you know what, I don't care what it takes. I remember point blank, the first couple of days I was in the White House, we were doing this executive order on the Dakota and Keystone pipelines. And the president's in the Roosevelt room with a bunch of us, and he's about to sign it. And he looks up and he says at one point, well, this is all going to be made with U.S. steel, right? And everyone kind of, a bunch of the aides and some of the government officials that had helped put together, well, and he said, whoa, time out. What do you mean? And they said, well, it's difficult to do that. And he said, I'm not doing this if it's not for the U.S. workers. Like, why are we going through all this if it's not going to help increase wages, put more people back to work in America? I'm not doing this for the Chinese. I'm not doing this for other countries that ship their steel to us. And he stopped dead in his tracks and said, bring this back to me when it's changed. Do you know how many other presidents would stop and do that, Chad? I don't think too many. And I think that just shows you. Too many people would say, oh, Mr. President, it's on the schedule already. We got everybody's here and we're supposed to make pretty with this. This president said, I don't really care I'm going to fight for, like, I didn't get here for silly things like that. I'm going to make sure that we do these things. But Chad, I keep saying it. It's like, I think people have to understand that if we lose the fight and the disruption that this president brings to office, we're going to have a hard time going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100% on that. Sean Spicer, author of Leading America, President Trump's Commitment to People, Patriotism, and Capitalism. Sean, I know it comes out next week. Tell folks, different ways that they can, pre-order the book and get it.
Thanks, Chad. So everything that you need to know is at SeanSpicer.com. But if you go on Amazon right now and pre-order Sean, go to Leading America or just search Sean Spicer Books. I'll tell you something I'll do for your listeners, Chad. If you buy the book on Amazon today or tomorrow, Leading America, and you take a snapshot and send it to contact@SeanSpicer.com, I will personally send you a book plate to insert in there, personalized to any of your listeners right now. But I appreciate you having me on, and I want to do something for your listeners. So if you go to Amazon, buy the book, and snapshot that you purchased it, send it to contact@SeanSpicer.com. We will put in the mail for you a book plate to insert in your book, and I'll personalize it for anything that's legal and civil and not profane. So if you want to get it as a gift for somebody, whatever, we'll do that for any of your listeners, Chad.
Sean, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You bet, man.